The Super Speedway Podcast is a Dream Bigger media production. For news, photos, show notes, and information about advertising on the podcast, visit www.thesuperspeedway.com.
3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Super Speedway.
Welcome to episode 139 of the Super Speedway Podcast, recorded February 6th, 2020. I'm your host, Eric Young, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host, James Cush. James, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Good. It's race season.
Well, we've done back-to-back pods for the first time in a long time, since the end of the season. So
I know.
We are, as we were talking before the podcast, we are starting to get into the groove. We are not there yet. We are still a jumbled mess. But
yeah, jumbled mess.
We are trying.
Best way.
We are laboring.
Best way to describe it, jumbled mess. And hopefully we'll get our groove. We get to get some practice this week with a little bit of race discussion. And we get to break down a race next week, sort of. And then we get to continue in our jumbled mess and try like idiots to predict what's going to happen this season and fail miserably.
Yeah, I called them our awful yearly predictions, which I feel like I had a pretty good batting average last year, better than usual, but still it's not great. It's never great.
I would actually go so far as to consider myself an expert in this sport. I mean, not because I work in it or anything like that, but just because I've been watching a long time. I understand the trends. I feel like I can be, from a fan standpoint, I think I could consider myself an expert. And I suck at predicting.
Well, we're both terrible at predictions and fantasy. We have no idea what we're doing, and it's alarming, to say the least. Yeah, but here we are.
1 hour ago, James, haulers were pulling into Daytona.
Ah, yes. Good.
Yes.
Good.
It's that time. With that, we've got a little bit of news this week. You know, we only had a week in between, so we don't have like an entire show's worth of news this time. And hey, maybe we'll even be a little short tonight. That wouldn't be bad. We say that every episode, and then we're in
the micropod. Yeah, the micropod is a far-fetched dream.
Yeah, it's a mirage. It's never actually happened.
Yeah, it's always on the horizon, but never there.
Yeah. Actually, I've done it. I've done short episodes before. It's just usually when you're not around. So obviously you're the problem.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I'm not gonna disagree.
All right, so NASCAR inducted their 2020 Hall of Fame class. James says the Joe Gibbs Racing Edition. Joe Gibbs, Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, Buddy Baker, and Waddell Wilson were inducted into the Hall of Fame. Stewart had a good speech. I got to listen to his speech. I'm sure. Do you have any takeaways from it, James? I'm sure you listened to it.
Loved his speech, and I really, really enjoyed him thanking all of his girlfriends.
Yes, that was great.
That's total Tony Stewart moment. It was beautiful.
If I had any time in my life, I would have pulled some audio from Stewart's speech because it was excellent. I think I heard Joe Gibbs as well, and those are the only two I heard, I believe. I didn't hear Labonte's.
Yeah, I watched Terry kind of introduced Bobby, which was cool, the brothers, and now both Hall of Famers, which is an awesome deal that both Labonte brothers are Hall of Famers. I mean, I can remember one of my earliest NASCAR memories is Bobby winning a race while Terry won the 96 championship. So, yeah, I mean, those guys, the Labonte brothers were legends in the 90s, as far as we were concerned as fans. So that was cool to see that.
Right.
And then, I called it the Joe Gibbs Racing Edition in the show notes because, Stewart and Labonte, they really built the empire that is Joe Gibbs Racing, that Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin and such they're reaping the rewards of Joe Gibbs Racing based off of, the success of Stewart and Labonte. They really were the pioneers of that team.
Right.
Which is kind of cool. They all went in together in that sense,
Yeah,
really
pretty neat how that fell. I did get to hear. I don't think I heard the whole speech, but I heard some of Waddell Wilson's speech too, where he admitted to have never being caught cheating, or having getting caught for cheating with the motor or something like that. It was a pretty good line. It was good.
Yeah, that's good.
And I know they were trying to figure out on Sirius whether he was being sincere or if it was a tongue-in-cheek answer. It sounded pretty tongue-in-cheek to me.
Yeah.
It's
a great class. This is a great class, and we'll get into it here in a minute. But the last class of 5 that we're going to have in the foreseeable future, but a really good class. I mean, Buddy Baker For those NASCAR fans who kind of came along in the era that Eric and I have,
Right.
for a long time, Buddy was the voice of NASCAR. He was one of those guys.
Yep.
He was a Mike Joy type, or maybe a Darrell Waltrip is more. He was Darrell Waltrip before Darrell Waltrip.
Right.
He was that driver who brought the expertise. And I can, if you close your eyes and envision an old race from the 90s or early 2000s, you can almost hear Buddy Baker a little bit. And that's kind of my memories of Buddy. Not so much as a driver, a great driver in his own right. Daytona 500 champion, Southern 500 champion, Coke 600 champion too. So he was no slouch in that aspect, but I remember him as the broadcaster.
Yeah, most of mine is also along the lines of the broadcaster. And yeah, I mean, if I heard his voice right now, it just sound like home, basically.
Yeah.
Grew up listening to him on a lot of races, seeing him on a lot of TV broadcasts, and was a big part of that. I think TNN and CBS, I think he did work with. I can't remember exactly, but
yeah,
back in the day when you had to check the TV guide every week to know what channel the race was on. So,
yeah.
But
He was. Yeah, I remember the old TNN Motorsports
Mhm.
days and CBS.
Yep.
Way back when, before the big money from Fox and NBC and all that came in, ESPN.
Back when TNN was the Nashville Network.
Do you remember when he had his Sirius XM show? I was in college and I relentlessly listened to Sirius XM NASCAR radio, and he was always on the afternoon drive show.
See, when I listened to NASCAR radio, I must have missed that era because I listened to it when it was still XM. And then I stopped subscribing to XM right before Sirius bought. I think NASCAR switched to Sirius is what happened. The NASCAR channel went to Sirius, and they were still separate companies at that time. And I didn't have a Sirius receiver. I wasn't buying a new receiver. I was poor. So I just gave up satellite radio because, I mean, that was 90% of what I listened to was NASCAR.
Yeah.
So, and then I came back when I got my new car a few years ago. So there was a big chunk of time there that I had nothing to do with Sirius.
Yeah. No, he was probably one of my favorite shows on there because they came on right after Mike and Pete in the mornings, and then he had that, and he was on in between them and Moody. That was his spot. I think him and the Postman.
Okay.
Him and Steve Post. So that was a good time back in my God, that was almost 10 years ago. Now that I'm thinking about it,
it's crazy, isn't it?
Holy smokes!
Well, you know what's crazy is like somebody will say something like, or I'll see some highlights from like 2007, and I'm like, oh, that wasn't that long ago. And it's like, holy crap, that was a long time ago.
I know, it's approaching 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. I can't believe we're having a Hall of Fame discussion and not spending more time on Smoke.
Yeah, I know. I think
my favorite driver.
I think you're trying to avoid it out of respect, or like maybe not respect, but just not trying to gush too much.
Yeah, but he was that. Yeah, I guess he was the highlighted driver. He was the main. What would you call it? He was he was the last speaker, so he was kind of like the featured.
He's the
driver.
headliner.
Yeah, the headliner. There you go. So, everybody knows my Smoke fandom. It holds no bounds. So.
Well, that's one of the things we've talked about Tony quite a bit on this podcast, and I think I'm not the fan that you are, but I was a fan of Tony Stewart. I was a fan of Tony when he started driving, in NASCAR anyway, and I think you and I both share a very mutual respect of him, and we've talked about on this podcast that
plenty, yeah.
Tony's our modern day AJ Foyt. I mean, he's good in everything.
Yeah.
And maybe not the best NASCAR driver ever, and maybe not even, I don't know where he'd rank in the top 10 or whatever.
I've got him.
NASCAR.
Yeah, I've got him in that. That's going to be a good podcast. Maybe that's an off week podcast this summer or something. But I've still got him in the top 10, and I think there's one driver driving right now who could pass him. He doesn't need to be named. We all know who he is. He's coming. But yeah, he's I got him like around 7th or 8th all time.
Yeah, I'd have to sit down actually with a list of names and decide where he'd fall, but I can't imagine him being outside the top 10. I mean,
he's got the 3 championships, which is
exactly.
That pushes him over the edge a little bit. And I've said this on the podcast before, and I'll just say it one more time. He won titles in the Jimmy Johnson era.
Yeah.
And that is more than most,
Exactly.
He got 2 titles while battling Jimmy Johnson, and now Kyle Busch, Kyle Busch got one when Jimmy Johnson was still Jimmy Johnson, and now as Jimmy's kind of tailed off towards the end, Kyle Busch got another one. So that's, that goes into Kyle Busch's resume too.
Yep.
He's had to earn those titles as well. So
yeah, I would say if you look at Tony from just a strictly NASCAR standpoint, he's a top 10, greatest driver. Again, I don't have all the names in front of me, so maybe I'd rank him further, but I don't think I'd rank him outside the top 10.
Yeah, he's in there.
But
he's in there.
Yeah, I mean, even not race wins. I mean, just the 3 championships does that. But if you factor in all of his motorsports experience, then he ranks a lot higher. I mean, then he ranks probably top
IRL,
5. I mean,
yeah, IRL champion. The thing that he misses on his resume, and it's always gonna be kind of I don't know if it's a black eye. He's had a lot of success at Indianapolis and Daytona, but he doesn't have the marquee wins. He doesn't have the Indy 500 and the Daytona 500. And I think those two trophies not being in his trophy case are trophies that he desperately wanted, and I feel like he needed to put him over just a little bit more to get in that AJ Foyt territory a little bit. But he's not far off.
Here's my standpoint on that, though, is those trophies are trophies that make a career if you don't have the championship as well.
Sure, yeah.
But when you have the championships, especially in multiple series, that ranks above and beyond those. I mean, Dale Earnhardt's still arguably top 3 best driver ever without a Daytona 500 win.
Sure.
I mean,
and he's still a 7-time champion.
Right. So, I mean, that's a big empty space. And as a Tony Stewart fan, it's a huge empty space. For Tony, I'm sure it's a huge empty space. But in the grand scheme of things, no. I mean, if you're missing that stuff and you don't have the championship, then that's a big strike. But if you got the championships to back it up, especially multiple championships in the Cup Series, those trophies in the grand scheme of things don't mean anything.
Yeah, and I think too, if you cut his career into a pie, I think he achieved about 80 to 85% of what his maximum would have been.
Yeah.
You get you get those 2 trophies, and now you're pushing 95%.
Right.
That's where I think they're small chunk of the pie, but they do make up a piece.
Well, and you also have the thing with Tony too, that if he would have concentrated his entire career on one sport, he would have been a lot greater in that particular sport. But the fact that he spread himself around in the sports that he did, and still is as great as he's been in those sports, that says a lot too.
Well, yeah, and you think of him winning World of Outlaws races.
Right.
That's not easy to do, and he very well could have been a full-time World of Outlaws driver and maybe been a Steve Kinser.
Yep.
And but he decided to kind of dabble his way up the ranks, and then when he finally got to the Cup Series, he became one of the best in that series too. So yeah, will always go down as the guy who could drive anything.
Well, yeah. If he stayed in IndyCar, he would have won probably Indy 500s. He would have won multiple championships. Yep. I mean, it's
the dude would beat you in a shopping cart if you're racing in a parking lot.
Tony's just got motorsports ADD, and so he can't concentrate on something too long. But the fact that he's done that and still been as successful as he has been says a lot about. I mean, obviously he's in the Hall of Fame, and I don't think any of us doubted that he would be.
Well, and him and Joe Gibbs going in together is really it's great on multiple levels. But you just said a great point that I wanted to also emphasize. Tony Stewart and Joe Gibbs. Think of 2 guys who have given more to this sport than those 2 guys. And Buddy Baker, you could even lump him in there too. With his work outside of racing. But Joe Gibbs, he didn't have to get into NASCAR.
No.
He was a successful Super Bowl winning football coach. He didn't have to do anything.
Right.
But he built a behemoth, and NASCAR is better because we have Joe Gibbs, and it's definitely better because we have
something from nothing.
Yeah.
Like he's not somebody okay, again, not to put anything against Tony Stewart, but Tony Stewart started a team by buying into a team that already existed, and albeit they weren't great.
Given half of a team, right? And then
they weren't great, but they had a lot of money behind them. Gibbs started from nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I read a great story about when Tony Stewart had to tell Joe Gibbs he was leaving in 2008, and Joe was upset, but Tony said to him, Joe, don't you understand? This is my chance to become you.
Right.
And you've taught me everything. And he said, I'm getting half of this team, and all I have to bring is my expertise and my people, and we can succeed. And I want to do that. I want to be like you. So what a great, and to see that they still have that kinship, even now is pretty cool.
Right. Yep. Very cool.
Yep.
Speaking of Hall of Fame, we get some new rules for next year. Changing things up, which I think we all predicted this was coming. We knew at some point, and we figured it'd probably be soon. And so instead of inducting 5, we're going to induct 3 now. And I think the best part about this whole deal is the fact that they're switching it into the categories.
Yeah, for sure. And we have the wrong link in the show notes.
Yeah,
which I think
I'm like, why is this not working?
Yeah, well, we'll find it.
Jeez, that's what happens when we let James do the notes.
I must have been copying and pasting one too many times.
What was it? The Tony Stewart link? How many times did you put the Tony Stewart link in the show notes?
No, it's yeah, we have the Clash link in the anyway. Anywho, so we're going, but basically the gist of it is we're going from 5 inductees every year, which was a lot from the beginning, but we're going down to 3.
The new notes are in there, except now they're crossed out. Yeah, down to 3. But so we split it up though, where we have 2 of those will be current or modern
era. Yep.
Modern era inductees, and 1 will be what's the I just had it in my head. What is the term that they're using? Pioneer, yes, pioneers. Yes. So basically, they're going back 60 years. Anybody from 60 years back will be in the premier category or the pioneer category. Everybody in front of that or to this end of it is in the modern era. And then I believe if you are on the modern era ballot for 10 years, you don't get inducted, then you move to the pioneer ballot, right?
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yep.
Yes. So I love this because there's always been so much discussion over how do you split the ballot? We don't want all modern people in, but we don't want to go all, history too. You have to have those modern names in here to keep people interested in it. I think this is a great breakdown. One thing is who's the other modern day guy that gets in this year? Because Dale Jr.'s getting in. Yeah,
this is going to make it very interesting for Carl Edwards.
Right, because Carl is up this year.
Yeah, he's not going to get in right away.
I don't think he is.
He's going to have to wait a little bit.
I'd have to look and see who all the modern people are that aren't in.
Who would qualify? Yeah, who are the modern era people who would qualify? But you know what? Dang it, I like this because this is a Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Pretty Good.
Right.
And it should be hard to get in.
Yeah, if we nominate 5 every year forever, we're gonna run out of drivers to nominate.
We're gonna run out of crew chiefs and everything. So then this is good. I think the early years we were able to get in a couple of modified guys, some Truck Series and Busch guys. So we're good on that front.
Yep.
Now we are. Now we're building our Hall of Fame. And, think about how many players play like baseball and.
Right.
It's 1 or 2 guys get in the Hall of Fame every year in that sport. So I think 3 for NASCAR is perfect. I love the modern era and I love the pioneer aspect of it. So we don't forget about our past while also, we need some of our living legends as well in the modern era to come through too. So I think it's going to be a nice balance.
Yeah, I think it's perfect. I think it's just another one of those decisions that NASCAR has made right over the past couple of years, which is awesome. There's nothing to complain about here. I think it's excellent. It's going to be real interesting this year because there's no way Dale Jr. doesn't get in on the first ballot.
Yeah.
No way. If Dale Jr. doesn't get in on the first ballot, then it's a travesty.
Well,
it is. I'm telling you, it is. I know your standpoint, but it is the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Best Driver there is either. So,
but and I'm going to argue that if we're going to put Dale Jr. in on the first ballot, regardless of what, this is just a great comparison, but regardless of what Denny Hamlin does from here on out in the rest of his career, then we need to consider Denny Hamlin a first ballot Hall of Famer.
I think he is.
Yeah, and I think so. I think has a pretty dang good resume, championships or not. I mean, Mark Martin made it in too,
Yeah,
so
the only thing that Denny has against him is if, he just happens to, hang it up at the end of this year, surprisingly, and goes in it up against Jimmy Johnson and maybe somebody else,
Right.
Then because Jimmy's going in on the first ballot too. He better.
Oh yeah. Jimmy Johnson's a lock.
Jimmy's got probably the best chance of anybody at going in at 100%.
He's a unanimous Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Definitely.
No doubt about it. Especially with this new format. If we're going to be doing it this way, he needs to be. Yeah. I mean, we have 3 7-time champions.
Yeah.
He's going in, and he
Exactly.
could. I mean, theoretically, he has a chance for 8. So
Yeah.
it's his resume is not done.
Yeah, exactly. All right. iRacing gets a new title sponsor. Peak Antifreeze is gone for their iRacing series. It is now the NASCAR Coca-Cola. I don't know what the heck the actual name of it is, but Coca-Cola is the sponsor.
iRacing series.
There you
Yes.
go. The biggest news of this as a NASCAR 2003 fan is that iRacing is bringing back Coca-Cola Super Speedway out of the NASCAR 2003 vault. They're reconfiguring the track and they're going to bring it out for iRacing. Those of you who didn't play NASCAR 2003, this is a 3 mile, if I remember correctly, 3 mile, like oval shaped, like egg shaped oval, high banked,
oval, no restrictor plates.
unrestricted, and it was damn near impossible to drive around it without wrecking. And the aerobatics that your car would do when you lost control on this track was just awesome. And the promise was that if they could, if Coca-Cola would step up and sponsor, that they'd do the track, and Coca-Cola stepped up, and here we go. So
yeah, I actually got down the rabbit hole of the Coca-Cola Super Speedway YouTube, and it's pretty cool.
I absolutely loved playing that track, except I couldn't usually make it more than 3 laps without wrecking.
We need iRacing to get the Tiburon,
yeah, I think.
Yeah, from EA Sports.
Yeah.
Remember, it was basically like a bigger version of Talladega, and you drove backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need that too.
There's a couple pretty good NASCAR 2003, NASCAR 2002, maybe
EA
NASCAR
Sport
99 tracks that are. There's some good stuff there that we've got sitting in the old papyrus wings as well. So
yeah, and there's probably some fan created stuff out there too. That's pretty good.
Oh yeah, definitely. Shoot, I mean, I still have a CD of all of my NASCAR 2003 mods that I downloaded that I was afraid I would never find again when I reinstalled the game, and I've just never reinstalled the game. And now it's outdated. Although I've still seen videos recently that there's still some pretty cool stuff for it, but.
People are still running NASCAR 2003.
Yeah,
still to this day.
It will continue until iRacing gets their AI on everything, and then people will jump over to iRacing. And that, I think iRacing putting AI, artificial intelligence, and having computer cars race against you will be a huge step for them, as far as the non-sim market. I think
you're
that'll bring
getting
a
your
lot of
enjoyment
people.
out of your game if you're going to be paying for this game, and iRacing is a subscription model too. I think
Right.
so. Yeah, you should be able to get as much out of that as you possibly can.
I would be more apt because I've not bought into.
I'm
the
waiting for
online
you
gaming.
to. Yeah, I'm waiting for you to make the leap. It's going to eventually happen.
I need a lot of expendable income, and right now there's cameras and stuff that are on my radar. So,
Yeah,
I'm sure if I told my wife, "Hey, I'm going to buy a PC this year instead of taking a bunch of trips to NASCAR races," she'd probably be on board for it.
Yeah. Well, eventually the boys are going to get old enough and leave the house, and that's going to be right in your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to say that, my argument for iRacing was that I can't afford to be a racer, an actual race car driver, and this is the closest I can get.
We're saving money.
Yep. Exactly. It's a lot cheaper than racing.
That's how you got to approach these things, man. We're saving money.
Yeah. I added this in the show notes, James. So, James Small was on Sirius XM today. I don't remember what show he was on. I think might have been with Chocolate Myers. I don't know. Is it JR that's on with Chocolate Myers now? I don't know.
I have no idea. I haven't listened to Sirius in forever.
Anyway, he was on. James Small is Martin Truex Jr.'s new crew chief. And so he talked about the T-shirt that Cole Pern used to wear all the time. So the T-shirt's coming back this year, even though Cole's not there. James is going to continue it. So what he said happened was that Cole got tired of wearing polo shirts to the races. So he just put on a T-shirt, and nobody said anything about it. And when he went over to JGR, he just continued to do it. Nobody said anything. They've gotten away with it, so James is going to do the same thing. I thought that was great.
That's good.
We've all seen the T-shirt. We've commented about the T-shirt, but nobody's ever really asked what's going on with the T-shirt. I just thought it was something everybody knew, but apparently it's just a thing that they just did, and nobody called them out on it.
It's like Bill Belichick wearing a hoodie.
Yeah.
That's kind of the trademark thing. Yeah.
Yep. I like the fact that Cole was always. He just
beat to his own drum.
Yep.
That's what Craig Cole always was, and he left on his own terms too. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I like that James is going to do that this year. Be cool to see on Pit Road still. So With that, I think that's the news. I don't see anything new jumping out on the old Twitterverse.
No, I think we're good, man.
Yeah, it's time to talk racing. So we have the Busch Clash this weekend, Sunday, right? Sunday. I think
Sunday.
we qualify Saturday, right?
Yeah, cars are on track on Saturday, and I think the race is Sunday. Yes.
Yeah, we switched the race. The race went to the daytime on Sunday.
Daytime on Sunday.
I remember last year there was a lot of talk about how this race is completely pointless, and a lot of people wanted to get rid of it. So we'll see what happens this year. But I always liked it. It's a little preview to the season. It kind of leaves you wanting more. Unfortunately, we get 500 miles next weekend at Daytona. We also get the ARCA race this weekend. ARCA Series kicks off this weekend.
Oh God,
that's on Saturday. I believe Haley's racing in the ARCA race, right? 'Cause she's running the full season of ARCA.
Yeah, and Natalie Decker will be.
So there'll be one wreck at least.
Well, it's the ARCA series. It is a wreck.
I will be biting my fingernails through the whole thing as usual because it's the only thing scarier than ARCA at Daytona is ARCA at Talladega.
I don't know why they're even running on these big tracks anymore. But I understand why. But
hey, I'd rather these guys learn it there than in the truck series. Although that's what Natalie Decker tried to do and it didn't work.
Well, she's not done. Sorry, Natalie. If you're a listener, my bad. Sorry.
Right. So we have 18 cars entered in the Busch Clash, right? These are all entries, not.
Yep, that's correct.
All right. So let's run down the list of who we got in the Busch Clash. Kurt Busch. These are in order by number, by the way.
So the Bushes.
Yeah. Kurt Busch, Brad Keselowski, Austin Dillon, Kevin Harvick, Ryan Newman, Chase Elliott, Eric Almirola, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney, Clint Boyer, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Eric Jones, Joey Logano, William Byron, Kyle Larson, Jimmy Johnson, and Alex Bowman. And Jimmy Johnson is the defending winner of this race, is he not? Or did he win the...
He is right. That is correct. That's where I don't know if you still have it on the soundboard.
Yeah, where is it?
Jimmy does that a lot at these tracks.
That one? Is that the one?
Oh, that's a year ago. Yep.
There you go.
We can retire Paul Menard just like the real Paul Menard.
Yep. Nice. It's terrible. So we get to pick who we think's gonna win the old Clash. It's pretty much a crapshoot. I would argue that this race tells us nothing about what we'll see on Sunday at the 500. How many times did Dale Earnhardt win this race before he won the 500?
Stewart. Yep, yeah. Tony Stewart won this race a lot.
So that's why I'm going to pick the driver I'm picking. But James, you're on the list first, and even though you made the show notes, I'll let you pick first anyway. Who's your pick?
We're not doing no dark horses for the Busch Clash.
Yeah.
We'll start our
There's only 18 drivers. How can you have a dark horse?
Yeah, and there's no drivers who I would consider a dark horse either.
No.
Who's gonna win the Clash? Oh man, Ryan Blaney.
Ryan Blaney. That's a good one.
Blaney.
That's a good pick.
He's been pretty good on the plate tracks. Not considered plate tracks anymore, but he's been good.
So here's why I kind of gave a hint is what I'm going with. So, I'm going with somebody who I think there's only one thing left for this guy to do, and that's win a Daytona 500. And I think it's going to be one of those things like Earnhardt, like Stewart, like Waltrip, where it's going to be tough for him to get that race. But I think he's going to be able to come out here and win everything else on Daytona 500 week. And I'm going to say Kyle Busch comes out and wins the Clash.
The champ.
And fails to win the 500 next weekend. So, Kyle Busch for me.
Kyle Busch, all right. Yeah, I like...
and I'm pulling that right out of my butt because I guarantee you guys it's going to be a Chevrolet winning this thing this weekend. They got the new body.
Well, the Fords have shown their strength.
It's a Chevy. Chevy's going to do it. So, here's the other question I have for you. So, we're qualifying this weekend. Right, we are qualifying this weekend.
Yeah.
So, which Richard Childress car sits on the pole?
I think a Hendrick car will sit on the pole. They seem to be... Yeah, they seem to nap quite a bit.
Alex Bowman for the pole.
I like Byron for the pole.
I'm gonna go Jimmy Johnson for the pole. I'm honestly gonna go Jimmy Johnson for the pole.
Maybe.
Yeah. Jimmy Johnson or Austin Dillon. Those are my picks.
I don't trust Chase Elliott on the big tracks. I know I've said that before, but he's a talented driver and he's very good. He's very good, but he has very poor decision making on the big track. I agree. So I just don't trust him. I just don't. Sorry, guys.
Man, how great would a Chase Elliott Daytona 500 win be?
That would be nice. It'd be a nice pop. Would be a nice pop for him.
That'd be really big. He'd
be really good. He'd be really good on the media circuit.
Yeah.
So would Ryan Blaney. And Kyle Larson, I think, would be good.
Yeah.
On the media. get some of the young blood out in front of the ESPNs and the late night shows and stuff like that.
Yeah, it'd be good. So yeah, next week we'll preview the 500. We'll talk about who we think's going to win that thing, and then we're going to preview the whole rest of the season as well.
Are we going to record during the duels like we did last year?
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I'd rather record Wednesday. I think that was the plan last year, and something went wrong, and we ended up doing it on Thursday.
Recording during Duel 2, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
That's how
I'm certain that I didn't intentionally schedule during the duels.
Remember when we used to work during the duels?
Yes.
And
No.
random during the day?
No, I never did that because I always took a long lunch or called in sick and stayed home and watched it. Now I got a TV in my office. I could watch it in the office, but
Yeah, the year Tony Stewart won the 2011 championship, I may or may not have been working for you and streaming because it was a rain delay. They streamed it online and streaming Tony Stewart winning at Chicagoland. That may have happened.
I
no longer work for you, sir. So I can say
the two things that I would take long lunches for were Apple announcements and the duels. So I'd stay home and watch them.
I really miss the duels being midday.
I don't.
Oh, I loved it.
Nope.
In college and stuff. Oh, I loved it.
No, I like the nighttime thing. No, I skipped classes in college to watch them.
Oh man, I loved watching them. That was like, man, I was in my zone in college. What those were good days.
I had a big long gap in between classes and when I went to CMU, and I lived about an hour and 20 minutes away from the campus. So I remember I'd go to the library and hang out there. So I'm like all prepared to go to the library, and I'm going to find a way to stream the race. And this was back, there wasn't much streaming at all. And, anywhere other than at school, there was no good internet connection, but we had T1 lines at school. So I was all planning to watch it. So I get in the library, try and find a feed, do all kinds of searching. It's got to be streaming online, got to be streaming. No, it's not streaming. No way to find it anywhere. So I'm like, I looked at the clock and it's like, if I left right now, I bet you I'd make it home before the green flag. I'll miss my last class, but it's the duels.
Totally worth it.
So I went home and skipped a class so I could watch the duels.
Well, yeah, we've all done that. It's okay.
Exactly. So, so next week, Daytona 500, it's here, man. The season is here. We'll be ready to roll, I guess.
Crowning a new champ at the end of the year already.
Exactly. It's crazy. Shout outs for this week. I don't think I have any, but I might think of something while James does his. James, what's your shout out this week?
My shout out is to all the hooligans who reached out to us this week about the fantasy league. You SOBs will get what you want. The fantasy league is back, but there's not really any caveats. The only thing I'm doing differently is I'm going to make this sucker wide open. I'm not dealing with any passwords or any of that stuff.
Nice.
So our league is, hold on just a moment. It's the super space speedway on NASCAR.com. Go search for it. Hop on in. If you were in the league last year, you are automatically already on the list.
Nice.
And if you give me any lip, I can click the remove button. I'm looking at it right now. So Hurricane Ditka, Scoters, Justin 713, Ranger, Runyon, and Freight Train are all automatically back. So if you guys want to keep it on, you're already there. Just pick your team. Let's go.
Nice.
And then if anybody else out there listening wants to join, come on out, man. Just search for us. And if you do have any issues, though, seriously, reach out to us on Twitter, and we'll get you set up.
Your best bet's probably reach out to James.
Just reach out to me. Yeah. Eric has a life, and he's busy. I have no life.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure.
I mean, I have a life, but I'll still respond.
So, actually, I do have a shout out. I want to shout out the people. James has, I think, shouted these people out before, and I've never actually taken the time to go and read it, but I finally did the other day because I finally remembered, I need to go check that out. So I want to shout out everybody who's left feedback on our podcast and Apple Podcasts. That's awesome that people have left feedback. I did notice that the first 5-star review was James. But I won't hold that against him. I did not leave a review. So I've thought about putting a 1-star on it, but that
would hurt our ranks, man. We gotta get those. We need subscribe, rate, review.
Yeah, definitely
5 stars.
But yeah, I'm surprised that there's people on there that I recognize a couple people, but I don't recognize all of them. So it's awesome.
There's some good reviews on there. Yeah, thanks guys. I stumbled across that oh man, a while back, but still, it was cool in the moment to see people responding to us on Apple Podcasts. I thought that was awesome. So that's a
Yes.
good one.
Another shout out I'll give you guys real quick is you may see when you guys get the podcast today, which you've already seen it, or starting next week, somewhere in this time frame, you're going to see the cover art change. I updated the cover art today. I have not uploaded it, but my plan is to upload it with the podcast, and I think it will automatically fill in if I remember last year. But Ryan Collier came last year to shoot the race in Michigan in August with me, and he got some awesome photos. And one of the photos that he got shooting through turn one, just so happens to have the champ Kyle Busch leading the field, and I believe Eric Almirola wrecking in the background. And that is our cover art for this year. So big thanks to Ryan for getting that, and maybe we can get him back to Michigan this year and get us some new ones. So I had one all picked out. When I went to Kentucky, I went up in the stands really early one day and got a bunch of pictures of the empty stands and all different angles. I even took one like square with square shutter so I could make sure that it was framed perfectly. That was my plan for it. And then I looked through Ryan's photos. It's like, God dang it, his is way better than mine. So I went that route. So new cover art courtesy of Ryan.
All right, it is good. I do like it. It's probably our best one yet.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
There were so many good photos to choose from. He's got a couple hundred photos that he sent me, and there were some that were really similar to last year's, where the cars are starting on the front stretch at Michigan and everything. But I wanted something with a little bit different angle, so you guys could tell it was different. And this one's pretty cool. So if you haven't seen it, check it out, and it'll be populating your feeds over the next week or so, prior to the Daytona 500.
Yeah.
And with that, James, where can they find you on social media if they want to talk to you during the week?
At James Cush on Twitter for all your fantasy NASCAR needs. There you go.
You can find me at T Super Speedway on Twitter with the season starting. I'll hopefully be tweeting a little bit more. On Facebook, you can find the podcast at facebook.com/The Super Speedway. Our website is thesuperspeedway.com. You can find the podcast on there. Show notes, links to all the articles we discussed, and a few other extra little features, some coverage of races, photos, etc. There will be, that is not how you say etc., but anyway. It's starting. The derailment is starting at the end, just like it always does.
Well, yeah.
There'll be more coverage this year. Planning on going to a few races. So I'll give you my schedule. I think I went through this last week. So here's my schedule right now. This is the planned schedule for race coverage this year. My plan is to do Michigan in June, back to Chicagoland in July-ish, whenever the heck the race is. Actually, I think it moved this year. Anyway, whenever Chicagoland is, Chicagoland, and then Michigan again in August, and then Bristol in whenever it falls, the first race of the playoffs, the night race at Bristol. Those are the confirmed-ish dates. And then I'm going to try and squeeze Iowa in, one of the Iowa dates if possible, but that is going to be the first one that gets cut, which means it'll probably get cut. So that's my plan right now. We'll see what happens. I originally wanted to do Pocono with the doubleheader, but I don't really have a huge desire to go to Pocono. And I started thinking about the fact that every media member in the universe is going to be there that weekend. And I just rather avoid that crowd and go where there's a few less people. So instead I chose Bristol for the night race.
That'll be a good one.
Yeah.
That will be good.
So that's the plan right now. Again, things will change. We'll see what happens. Who knows? If I can add another race or two, I will. Vacation at the new job probably won't allow it, but we'll see what happens. You never know. Right. With that, you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and SoundCloud. And if you guys want to become a part of the show, you want to help us out, help us get to the track a couple more times maybe, become a patron at patreon.com/thesuperspeedway. There's a few different tiers there that you can try out. Become a part of the show in different ways. Help us out. I don't expect any of you guys to pick any of the high ones. They're just there in case you're crazy like Ben was earlier last year and want to do that. But any help we get, we appreciate it. And heck, even if you don't want to throw any money our way, just go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. We'd love that. We appreciate everybody listening. It's always fun to see who stumbles across and starts following us. So we appreciate everybody. James, did I miss anything?
No, man, I think we covered it.
We're less than 45 minutes into this thing. I feel like I need to stretch it out.
The preseason is done.
Yeah.
We got to get the bugs out right now.
Yeah, we'll do a short one this week because next week's going to be long. Again, we'll preview the season. We'll run down our predictions. I think we'll probably use the same format we used last year, maybe some of the same questions as last year.
Yeah, fine. Maybe if there's a couple of fun new questions maybe we can think of, we'll throw them in. But yeah, that seemed to be pretty fun. I really like revisiting it before the playoffs too.
I know, me too. That was great last year.
Yeah. Remember that year? What was the year you were giving me a hard time about Kevin Harvick and he ended up making the Final Four? Do you remember that?
I
That
don't,
was
but
that was one of my fondest memories because he had a really bad year and all of a sudden he was at Homestead and I was like, what? You remember that? It was that year he won Texas late in the season. I
yeah.
think it was 2017. So that one didn't turn out so bad, but boy, I felt really terrible about that one for majority of the season.
I don't remember it, but me giving you a hard time sounds legit. So I'm
Yeah,
gonna.
well, that's what we do. We each give each other a hard time. We'll make terrible predictions, and half of them will be really bad, and then the other half will be kind of bad.
Yep, exactly. One other thing we get is well, I guess this isn't the first time, but it's the first Daytona 500 weekend that we're going to get to see the new package at Daytona. So it'll be interesting to see as well. Of course, we saw it last year in the 400 during the summer, but a little bit different in the daytime and all that. So we'll see what that brings us as well.
Yeah.
With that, we'll take a short week this week. Next week, we'll be back for a nice long one to preview the season. And for the first time in a while, this is legit when I say this, everybody. Let's head on out and let's go racing.